Hi, my name is Liam Holler, and this is my Eye Diplomat Application. So, in my own words, how do I define my learning disability? So, I would say, in the terms of learning, me having dyslexia and dysgraphia, they are most definitely a disability. Whether you do test results or even just hear me read aloud, which I hope you never have to hear, um, they're a clear disability to me. But in the context of my life, I would say dyslexia and dysgraphia are more so an advantage or even a teacher in certain circumstances. An example of this would be efficiency. So from a very young age, it took me a lot longer to do certain tasks than my peers did. So coming home from school, I didn't have as much time to kind of do other things, goof off, or like just waste time. So I learned how to manage my time efficiently from a very young age, and that carried over into my later schooling years. So today, as a senior in high school, I hear a lot of my friends complain about how they procrastinate too much. But procrastination has never been in my vocabulary because I've never had the time to procrastinate. So that's just one of countless examples of how my learning disability has actually been an advantage for me. They've made me the person who I am today and made me a better person along with that. How do I define success? I think success can be summed up in one word, and that word would be grit. No one who is successful today has gotten there without hard work. Kind of a motto that I live by in my academic career and my athletic career is that hard work beats talent when talent stops working hard. So that means no matter where you start in any field, you're not going to succeed without hard work. I think, honestly, it's as simple as that. To succeed, you need to put hard work in, time and energy. That's it. There's no secret formula, there's no tricks, there's no shortcuts. It's hard work. And once you put that hard work in, you will see results, and that's when you eventually succeed. So, a story about my my LD life. So I think to understand what it was like for me when I was first diagnosed, it's important to understand the backstory behind it. So I am severely dyslexic. It takes me a long time to read, and reading aloud is not pretty. So when I was in second grade, I can vividly remember the kids around me, my peers, were excelling in reading. They were reading chapter books. They were reading things that were normal for a second grader. When I would pick up a book and I would have blank looks on my face because at this point I still could not read. Going to school wasn't something I look forward to each day. Like, of course I liked hanging out with my friends, but sitting in the classroom, not being able to understand anything, in a class of 30 kids, I didn't get that much attention. So my problem was never really recognized, and I kind of went through a lot of elementary school and middle school. My teachers weren't bad people, but they just never picked up on it. I was always kind of just left behind. And while I've never considered myself a dumb kid, a lot of the adults around me did. And you kind of get pigeonholed into this type of kid. The kid who doesn't try, or the kid who's dumb because he doesn't try. And that was my label for a long time with teachers. And a lot of them gave up on me from an early age in middle school. But that all kind of started to change in high school. So in my 9th grade English class, my English teacher once asked after class, if the homework took anyone longer than 30 minutes, come talk to me after class. So that day, I came up to him after class, and I told him, the homework last night took me 5 hours to read what he assigned. And he was stunned, taken aback. But he sat down with me, and he really listened to my story, the struggles I had had for a long time. And he was the first kind of like ally I had in my life, because he too was dyslexic, and he could relate to a lot of these problems I had, and he kind of kickstarted the motion for me in school to begin to get accommodations, and he was the first person to really advocate for me. So learning that I had a learning disability at this point, I had never considered myself a dumb kid, and now I knew that was true. After receiving these accommodations in sophomore year of high school, not only did my grades skyrocket, because now I could finish the tests on times. Before I was leaving 15 questions blank, where when with extended time I could get A pluses 100%. It wasn't that I was dumb, I just learned differently. So these accommodations not only improved my grades, but my kind of self-esteem as a whole. Everything that I had believed in from this young age was now being validated on this big scale, and I became excited to learn. I wanted to learn at this point because it was an enriching experience, because I didn't feel like I was being left behind, but rather I was excelling. And this kind of ties into the metacognition of it all, thinking about or learning how I thought. So I spoke earlier about how I had to use my time effectively, and these were kind of adaptations I had made for myself. But now knowing that that's what I need to do, and learning about how I thought about these things, or how I learned, it allowed me to adapt even more to my surroundings. And then it kind of sounds weird, but life became easier. Life wasn't overtly difficult before this, but knowing how I thought, knowing how I behaved, and knowing what my difficulties were made all the difference. I think the key to unlocking my LD success was really the metacognition, learning about how I learned. Once I knew that, everything else kind of fell into place. And then finally, learning to advocate for myself. I had been advocating for myself even before I knew I was advocating for myself. I know that kind of sounds weird, but before I was even diagnosed with an LD, I would be talking to teachers, and I'd be telling them that it takes me longer for some of these assignments. I told them there are going to be some things you assign, and I will not be able to finish them on time. Or if you assign me work in a classroom, I will not do it in the classroom. Oftentimes I would sit there because I just knew I could not read if there's any noise around me. I need complete silence to be able to read. So when teachers would assign work to do in the class, oftentimes I wouldn't do it, not because I was rebellious or lazy, but because I couldn't do it. So I approach teachers and tell them I'm not a bad student, but I just can't work in this environment. And we would work something out even before I had accommodations. So when I learned I need to advocate for myself, for my accommodations, at this point it was second nature. I had already been doing it my whole life without really knowing I was doing it. And then finally, as a child, if I had been given one LD wish, that's interesting. Because I don't think under any circumstance I would want to take away my learning disability. It's really shaped me into the person I am today. But if I could go back and tell myself something, I think it would just be that it all works out. Because kind of like that grit of like pushing through these hard tasks, and really learning to manage my time, all these skills from a young age because of my learning disabilities have made me a better person. So I wouldn't want to take any of this away, but I think I would just let earlier Liam know that it all works out okay. That's it. Thank you for your time.